Before we get to the main event, now I want to talk about the touchy-feely woo-woo things that happened around the farm during the months leading up to these crimes. Do you have any idea what sorts of the town considered to be possibly paranormal activities that might have occurred?
Well, strangely enough, the picture of the guy I saw on the roof, so walking, but I would say noises inside of the house that were unexplainable.
Okay, where do you get that?
The guy walking on the roof.
The guy. Okay, that's the guy you told us was looking over these women, who's
Yes.
in the tiles somewhere.
Yes.
He's walking. You had said he's not really visible to you, but you could get a sense of him. Now you feel that he's walking on the roof?
Well, yeah, because why else would he be in the tiles? Yes.
How would I know?
I would say that as much as me I thought it was paranormal, I'm going to say it was human.
Welcome to Seeing Dead People, the mystery storytelling podcast with a clairvoyant twist. RadioSidney presents Seeing Dead People, episode 39, Horror at Witch's Wood.
Hey Darcy, how you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Nicola, how are you doing?
I'm Peachy Darcy, and as I say, I think always at the beginning, I'm always so keen to find out what you think about the story that I'm going to tell, and more importantly, what you can tell me about the story I'm going to tell. I always find that lots of fun. So we're going to slide back in time today, Darcy, to the not-so-roaring 1920s in Europe, specifically to a forested region in Germany called Bavaria. We're going to investigate one of Germany's most infamous unsolved crimes, where over 100 suspects were interviewed.
Wow.
The crimes featured confounding and locally thought to be paranormal events, which preceded the crimes, so kind of up our alley. The crimes themselves, unfortunately, were so brutal and inexplicable, they've baffled law enforcement and criminology buffs for decades. But maybe today, with your psychic abilities, we might just discover some new insights. So are you game to head overseas to the deep, dark, dense woods of the Bavarian countryside, Darcy?
Sure. Let's give it a shot. Not sure my ability's all tuned up yet, but we'll give it a shot.
Okay, well, start tuning. Well, I set the scene and the time frame. So as I said, we are in Germany, specifically in Bavaria, near a little hamlet called Kaifeck. It's situated at about 40 miles north of Munich. The year is 1922, and the actual date of the crimes, it's believed to be March 31st of that year, 1922. Much of the geographical area is covered in thick coniferous forest. I'll give you an idea of what was happening in Germany at the time. In the early 20s, Germany was in the midst of massive and challenging changes following the end of World War I. Inflation was devaluing the Deutsche Mark, and along with it the population's savings and pensions. As a result of the deaths of 2 million German soldiers and the crippling of 4 million more during the war, workers were few and far between in the post-war era, resulting in division and challenges throughout the country. To add to this social unrest, radical and divisive political parties were becoming the norm, and included the beginnings of a new party led by none other than the sociopathic maniac called Adolf Hitler. But life in our area of Bavaria was more down to earth, with folks focusing on family and the basic daily struggles to survive as small, independent farmers. So let's have our first look at our first image, Darcy. It's just a screenshot, photo number 1, a screenshot of Google Map, which you'll see our little town, Kaifeck, highlighted by the red pin. That just gives you a sense. We're down quite near Munich, which is really the lowest, southern part of Germany. Our actual specific location is an isolated farm. It is called Hinterkaifeck, and in German, Hinter means beyond or behind. So Kaifeck is the little village, and the farm we're going to talk about is called Hinterkaifeck, thus behind or beyond the village. It was the last homestead on a single muddy track leading from the village. It's a farm. It was set in a clearing which contains a small house, some outbuildings, and a stable, along with an attached barn. The farm land area is enclosed by a forest to the north and the east. Remarkably, this forest is called Witch's Wood. And the open farmland is to the south and the east. So they have areas to actually farm, but they also are penned in by very dense, dark forest. So let's get a chance to see this spooky rundown farmstead in our black and white photo number 2. If you scroll to photo number 2, you'll see it's a simple, whitewashed, one-level, L-shaped building, Darcy, with a steeply pitched roof attic and a couple of outbuildings. In this photo of Hinterkaifeck, the actual living quarters, Darcy, are made up on the left-hand side of that broad face of that white building, and the stable makes up the right-hand side of that white building, and then the barn juts out towards us on the far right.
Okay.
So is there anything you could tell us about this place and its inhabitants at this time, Darcy?
Okay, first of all, did you actually write 1, 2, 3 on the photo?
No, but we will be talking about that. They are on there, yes.
So that would be the living area, possibly a bedroom. So it's got to be, I realize at that time and point, given that you said there were a lot of soldiers dead and crippled, this feels more like a father, like maybe a daughter or something, and a mother. Like, seems like there's 4 to 6 people in this place, or was maybe 7 at one point.
Okay. So how do you get that? I mean, it's just a black and white photograph, Darcy, of a little house.
It's a feeling. That's all.
But how do you isolate in that feeling more than one person, more than 4 people? What do you get? Little vibrations? What's happening?
Yeah, I guess that's how you would call it. And it's obviously got to be a gruesome murder, because as you're talking, I'm nauseous. And normally I only get nauseous when it's bad.
Yeah, and I'm sorry about that, because I know the last couple haven't been so bad, but yeah, you're going to be nauseous. Okay, well, before we meet the family, Darcy, let's have a closer look at the farmhouse in photo number 3.
But I'm going to say, I don't actually think they died in the farmhouse, but they lived in it. So this is the farmhouse, and then the annex off of it is the stables. Is that it?
Actually, I think if you call the annex that building that juts out towards us on the far right, that's the barn. If you look at photo number 3, you'll see just the actual sort of house, the broad part of the house. Only the left half is the house, the right half is a stable.
Okay.
It's all one building, but they're kind of half, and then the barn is beyond it and juts out towards us. So it's an L-shaped kind of mass of buildings. Okay, so the living quarters, you'll notice it has many windows on the left-hand side of the house. Very few windows on the right-hand side of the house where the stable is, but there is a sort of a stable door. And you'll actually see, if you pinch in, the guy that's standing on the right-hand side near a brick wall is one of our lead characters. The other 2 people are unknown. So we'll focus on him a little bit later.
That's okay. I can see the 3 people, but I actually thought there were 4 people there. It was until you said 3, and I'm looking and I thought, no, there's another lady here.
And where do you see that other lady?
Just standing down from the guy where the little tree is.
Okay.
She's got on a dark thing with an apron over top of it.
Okay, cool. All right, well, she's not in my photograph, but obviously you're already starting to get to know the family before I've even introduced them. So, that way to go. Okay, any other thoughts before we move on?
No, we're good. We can move.
Okay, so, but let's just summarize here. You've already said you think there's possibly 6 people that lived in this farmhouse, let's call it, farmstead, and you think they did not die in the house part, you think?
No, I don't think they did.
Okay, cool. Let's then meet our family that lives on the Hinterkaifeck farm. I have to tell you, Darcy, they were a troubled group. They were not liked by their neighbors or the villagers, and they were the topics of much salacious gossip in the local village and surroundings. So if you look at photo number 4, as you look at photo number 4, I'll list off the group of people that we're talking about today. And surprise, surprise, we're talking about 6 individuals, and you've already nailed that as 6 individuals. You said possibly 7, but it is 6 at the moment. We have a 63-year-old farmer called Andreas Gruber. We have his 72-year-old wife named Gazilia. They have a daughter who's 35. She's widowed. Her name is Victoria Gabriel. She has a 7-year-old daughter, also called Gazilia, and I'm going to call her Little Gazilia throughout the story. And they also have, Victoria has a 2-year-old son named Joseph. So in photo number 4, it's an undated photo. It's pretty blurry, I admit it, black and white. Might be difficult for you to get anything from this, but if we look at that photo on the left, we have their maid, whose name was, lovely name, Crescents with a K. Lovely name. The daughter Victoria to her right, she's holding the hand of a little child. I'm not sure if it's the little girl or the little boy because I don't know the date of the photograph and it's hard to tell if that's a male or a female. Then there's the father, Andreas, and his slightly older wife, also called Gazilia.
That would be a girl. And is Joseph not born yet?
Well, that's what I'm thinking. It's very possible that's little Gazilia because it's undated and it might well be well before our events. And so I had thought the same thing, that Joseph perhaps isn't born and that's Gazilia at age maybe 3 or something.
Okay, focused on those 4 people. The older lady, I don't think she lives that long. Well, there's also another person there. Okay, I am feeling there's also another man in this photo somewhere. And it could be a brother to him or something, or close relative. But the daughter, she's got that almost invisible look to her in this photo.
That's an interesting comment. What does that mean?
Like, she doesn't really exist. She's there for whatever pleasure, not necessarily her own. It's like she's trying to hide inside of herself.
Oh, okay. Well, that's very insightful, and it might come to some kind of fruition as we talk. Okay, let's have a look at photo number 5. It's a close-up of the main male character that we saw in the last photograph, this fellow Andreas Gruber, the father of the family, age 63. Not a very good shot, I admit, but I don't know if it tells you anything about him.
A mean old man.
Yeah, you're right. He's a mean old man, exactly.
I wouldn't want to be in a room with him.
What do you mean by that? Can you expound on that a bit?
He gives me that nauseous feeling as someone who believes he's entitled to do anything he wants and no one should be able to tell him what to do or how to do it.
And are you alluding to something more nefarious than just being a creep?
Yes.
You're alluding to something more sexual?
Yes.
Okay, well, you're really zeroing in on an issue and one of the reasons why they weren't a very popular family. We'll get to the details later, but as usual, you've jumped into the fray really well. Let's look at the women. Again, another picture of the women. Again, this is a cropped visual, so I want you to only focus, Darcy, on starting with the woman on the left with the little bandana on and the women to the right and the little baby, okay?
Is the woman with the bandana the mother?
Yes, I believe that is who I call older Gazilia.
Okay.
And then the middle person is, I believe, Victoria, the one you said has a blank look.
Yeah.
Okay, then to her right, her left is Crescents, the maid, and then the little child. Again, this is undated, so it might be the little Gazilia, it might be Joseph.
Yep. And the maid is the lady who I saw in the first one, where I said I saw the 4 people.
Yes, she's the one you saw? Okay. Do you still see a blank face on the Victoria character?
Basically. Even the mother seems aloof. But I have to say, look at the size of that birdhouse.
Yeah, it's a lovely one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder what they've got there. Well, it's certainly not a very good quality photograph, so it is difficult to get any kind of expressions from that. But I'll say that you may have noticed that Gazilia, the older woman, is nearly a decade older than her husband. This in itself caused many tongues to wag, constantly in the village. Add to that, as you have said, Andreas was a mean, arrogant man who controlled and dominated the women on the farm. So you've already alluded to this family dynamic that is beyond the pale. It's very disturbing, Darcy. So the details aren't really clear, but in general, what is the dark secret that this family is protecting?
Well, you probably have incest going on, but I want to say, if you look at this picture, there is a gentleman, okay, not physically on the roof, but he would be about 5'10", a little stocky. He wears round glasses. He's got dark hair. He's right-handed. He wears a gray sweater with a V on it. He wears something around his neck. I think he is who they're looking for.
You're seeing this in the roof tiles?
Yes. It's like he's observing everything.
Oh, cool. Okay, well, I literally don't know who that is at the moment. I have possibilities we'll get to, but I really don't know who you're seeing. That's really cool. Okay, but back to what is the secret this family is protecting?
Like I said, incest.
Okay, with who? Well, then who are the individuals involved in the incest?
Oh, I think the daughter, just by the feel of her.
With
daughter, father.
With the father. Okay, you're absolutely right. Andreas sexually assaulted his daughter Victoria for many years, and in fact, he was convicted of incest and spent a year in jail. To make a real mockery of jurisprudence, the daughter actually spent a month in jail herself for incest. Can you believe it? Insane. Now, she, the daughter Victoria, was married to a local young man named Carl Gabriel, and he fathered little Gazilia. He died in World War I, yet Victoria gave birth to Joseph 5 years later. Okay?
Wow.
That caused, of course, all kinds of consternation in the town, tons of gossip and confusion. Adding more confusion, it appears that Victoria was in some sort of relationship with a local fellow called Lorenz Schlittenbauer. He sometimes claims he was Joseph's father, sometimes doesn't. Others say someone else was Joseph's father. Who would you suggest?
I'm going to go with Lorenz.
You think he was Joseph's father?
I do.
You don't think Andreas was, despite the incest?
Nope, I don't think he was. I think it was Lorenz.
How do you know that?
Because when you said it, it was like a cold chill coming over.
And a cold chill is a good thing?
Like goosebumps. Yes, goosebumps are good.
Goosebumps are good. Okay. Well, everybody in the town thought that Joseph was actually the son and grandson of Andreas. But you don't think so. Okay. Now we have our location, we have our scene, we have our characters. Before we get to the main event, now I want to talk about the touchy-feely woo-woo things that happened around the farm during the months leading up to these crimes. Do you have any idea what sorts of the town considered to be possibly paranormal activities that might have occurred?
Well, strangely enough, the picture of the guy I saw on the roof, so walking, voices, I would also say, because they were, well, that might be something totally different. But I would say noises inside of the house that were unexplainable.
Okay, where do you get that?
The guy walking on the roof.
The guy, okay, that's the guy you told us was looking over these women who's
Yes.
in the tiles somewhere.
Yes.
You had said he's not really visible to you, but you could get a sense of him. Now you feel that he's walking on the roof?
Well, yeah, because why else would he be in the tiles? Yes.
How would I know?
I would say that as much as me, I thought it was paranormal. I'm going to say it was human.
Okay, so walking on the tiles would suggest to you what really, if it's human in reality?
That he could have lived in, there was an attic. He was living in an attic. He had access to the house somehow.
Wow. Well, Frank Darcy, like there goes the old seeing dead people free zone up the back of my neck because yes, and yes. Okay, I could have said, well, you might have said, well, there are noises. I mean, anybody could say they heard noises. But you very specifically said noises of someone in the attic, barely knowing that there was an attic. And in fact, yes, that's what Crescents, the maid, and others in the house, but she would say to the villagers, She was insistent that there were noises coming from the attic, voices coming from the attic. You mentioned voices. And the attic is empty and without windows, and it was thought that there was somebody up there. But when it was checked, because even the other members of the household got these sort of sensations, no one was ever found. So there's the idea of the paranormal thing hinting in here. So then let's continue on that paranormal phase. Crescent's talked about, as I said, strange sounds and noises. She quit her job in Hinterkaifeck about 6 months before our D-Day of March 31st. And it doesn't seem like she was the only one, as I mentioned, getting a sense of something odd going on. Village folk related later that both Andreas and Victoria mentioned they had heard odd sounds around the farm and in the house. And also, Andreas himself had a couple of very bizarre experiences. There was a snowstorm in late March, and he found one day footprints stepping towards the house, the stable, the barn area, whatever. He checked everywhere to find out where this person might have gone, couldn't find anybody around, and never found any footprints leading out.
I was just going to ask that. I was going to say, if there's no footprints leading out, then how did a person leave?
Exactly. And that's never been decided. This is something that puzzled Andreas at the time, and made him very, very worried. And to anyone else who's heard about it, there's been no answer to that. Also, the lock on a room that's called the machine room, and we'll see it on a little sketch, it's just at the back of the barn stable area, was broken. Andreas didn't replace it. Maybe now somebody was using it as a shelter, but again, he could never find anyone there when he went looking. He must have felt a little bit of unease and possible dread with the thought of footsteps heading towards your living quarters, your house, or your barn, and then never any footsteps leading away, and hearing sounds in your own living quarters that you can't understand. He also found a Munich newspaper of recent time frame in the house. When questioned, none of the women of the house admitted to having had the newspaper or having brought it to the house. When he asked the mailman who delivered daily where the newspaper came from, the mailman said he had no idea, that no one in the village even subscribed to that newspaper. So that was a bit odd. Who brought the newspaper? In addition, Gruber found his cattle wandering around free at a few times. He was a very careful man. He always locked up his cattle. He always maintained his farm fairly well. So that was puzzling to him, and no one admitted in the household that they let the cattle out. He might have forgotten once, but not several times. So these sorts of things caused consternation within the village and within the family. Can you give us any more sense of them?
Could it be any possibility that it could have been because there had been a war and everything, that maybe it was someone from the army that was hiding out, a draft dodger sort of idea? I do feel like there isn't this familiarity with the family, but I do feel like there is a familiarity with the surroundings. And like I said, I'm pretty sure this guy is 5'10", average build, dark hair, round glasses.
And you think he's the individual sort of haunting or hanging about. But you think he was a real person, not a paranormal spirit?
No.
Okay. Well, as a result of these bizarre occurrences, not surprisingly, the Gruber family, had a difficult time finding a replacement for Crescents when she left. But 6 months later, they finally got a new maid, a gal named Maria Baumgartner. She took on the job, and she arrived on our fateful day, March 31st, 1922. She was accompanied by her sister, so her sister was the last one to see her that we know about. Do you know what happened after Maria Baumgartner came to Hinterkaifeck Farm on March 31st, 1922?
Well, I'm sort of guessing that could be the date of the death of the people on the farm.
Okay.
When I say that, what I mean is I think they're all dead. I don't think just one or two, or the father lived or the daughter lived. I think everyone's dead.
Okay, there goes another little frisson up the back of the spine. How do you guess that, or intuit that?
Partly by how you said it, but the other part is just like the axe coming down. like literally, like something like an axe coming down.
Oh, Darcy, you kill me. And unfortunately, not literally. Well, you just used a term that we've not discussed. You've just discussed a method of murder. You said the axe coming down. Okay, where'd that come from?
Well, that would make sense in the fact that they're on a farm. One would think they need an axe for killing chicken, but it's not quite an axe. It's sort of like the kind where you're digging a thing in the road, a ditch.
Oh, geez, are you hot tonight? Like you're just stealing every thunder I've got.
Sorry.
That's okay. That's the whole point. You're amazing. Well, we'll work our way through to it. But yes, you've nailed the fact that you think 6 people were all killed here. I don't know how you got that. You think they were killed with an axe. Yeah, farm has axes, but farms also have saws. They also have usually guns. They have hammers. They have a lot of other implements you could use to kill somebody with. But you chose not just an axe. You chose a very specific, not quite an axe, and that kind of implement that you would use to sort of dig at the road, right?
Yep.
Yeah, right. Okay.
But you know what I find interesting is it had to been someone who, it had to be a man. There's no 2 ways a woman could swing that to get the effect of smashing in the skulls in the back. So it's definitely a male they're looking for. So if they had a female suspect, they can let her go.
Okay, well, when you say smashing the skulls, are you actually knowing that that's what happened?
Well, that's what I'm seeing in my head.
You're actually seeing that?
Yeah, like it's like I've got it here and I'm coming like this, and it doesn't feel like it's going in the chest. It feels like it's going back here.
Wow. Good grief. Well, you pretty well stolen the show, but we'll keep on going because you're amazing today.
Tired.
Well, you're doing great. Maybe there's something you may not get. Okay, something horrendous happened on the 31st, and you're pretty well right in what happened. But we don't know yet because the weekend passes, and the family doesn't participate in any way in the village, and they don't attend church, which is unusual. The little girl doesn't go to Saturday morning school, which is very unusual. However, some locals do see some activity on the farm, smoke coming from the chimney, a light, maybe a movement. So there's no real consternation that they haven't come to church. It's been kind of a wet and cold, windy weekend. Nobody shows up. But when little Gazilia doesn't show up for school on Monday, people start to worry. So do you get a sense of what might have happened to give us the idea that a tremendous amount of killing went down on one day, and yet there are signs of life on other days?
Well, because I would probably say that the person lived in the house to keep the signs of life going.
Why do you say that?
Because when you ask, my heart beat to a degree that there's still living people in the house, but they just didn't feel like the people that own the house.
Wow, I can't. You should do this when you're tired more often. I mean, not that you're not really good usually, but this is astounding. On Monday, so the event possibly happens Friday or maybe weekend goes by. Monday afternoon, mailman comes, notices the mail he's delivered on Friday has not been picked up as he's delivering the mail on Monday. Bit taken aback. Another repairman comes to the farm to go into the little machine room, which is just attached to the back of the stable and barn. Doesn't notice anybody there, does his work, and leaves. He doesn't see anybody, but he does notice that here's the dog, family dog, barking in the house, and that the barn doors are open while he's in there doing his work. But when he leaves, the dog is now tied outside, and the barn doors are closed. So he doesn't see anyone, but he gets a sense of something's going on. So when he comes back to the village, he shares his kind of concern, as the mailman has done, with the townsfolk, and Lorenz is one of the individuals who's keenly interested, obviously, because he's been seemingly dating if not more so, Victoria. So he gets on a couple of friends and they head out to investigate, and they arrive at the farm around 3:30 in the afternoon. You pretty well summed it up, but let's go again. What happens when they arrive at the farm? They find the house locked, but the barn door is open.
Instinct would be to go into the barn to see what's going on in case the people are in there, because they are farmers.
Right. So that's what they did. So they go past the dog, who's tied up, maybe slightly injured, very anxious. They enter the barn, and they can only get through the barn door one at a time. It's so narrow, you can only go in one at a time. What do they do when they come into the barn? What do they see?
Probably dead bodies.
Okay. Do you see anything special about those dead bodies, and how many dead bodies were there?
I think it would be all of them. So we've got the entire family, because I don't see anyone running around in my head saying I'm alive. So my guess is that they're in there probably either covered in straw, stacked in a way so people, like you said, you can only get one person in the door at a time, which means one person came in, was killed, maybe someone came in, looked for the person, and it just kept going like that till they were all dead.
Okay, very close to being accurate. You made a couple of nifty comments there. Number one, stacked. Number two, covered in straw.
Okay, I was thinking that it was cord wood. You know how you stack wood?
Absolutely.
And that's what I was thinking, because if it's such a narrow space, are you going to really spread everyone out?
Okay, and what about the straw idea?
I'm thinking soak up some of the blood, hide the people, so when people came in, they couldn't see the body. If I walked up to a door and I saw feet or something on the ground, I'm going to think twice about coming in.
Absolutely. Well, again, you're like so close, it's incredible. When the three men stumble to the door, like one first person in, then the next person coming in after them, that's exactly what they were faced with, Darcy. A cord stacking of bodies.
Oh, wow.
A board, like a door, had been put on top of them, and that was covered in straw. So a foot was sort of sticking out, and I think one of the gentlemen tripped like over this foot in the darkened area of the stable, and that's how they discovered them. But you're wrong in one aspect. There were only 4 bodies here.
Okay.
2 other bodies elsewhere.
Would it be the children elsewhere opposed to the adults?
No, we have Andreas, old Gazilia, Victoria, and the little girl in the barn stable area. Then we have Lorenz, supposedly, obviously in a panic. He rips through the bodies, moves them, disturbs them, trying to find the boy, his son, Joseph. Doesn't find Joseph. He goes racing into the house, which is really just along kind of the corridor, and he finds Maria, the maid, in her maid's room, down with the same kind of axe blow, dead. He moves across to Victoria's bedroom and finds the little boy bludgeoned by one single horrendously crushing blow, dead and bloodied in his bassinet.
Wow.
Isn't that incredible?
That is.
What kind of person would crush a little baby's head?
A total psychopath?
Absolutely a total psychopath, yeah. So let's look at the next image, which is image number 7. It's a graphic image, I warn you there, black and white. It's that of a body face down. This is one of the bodies as part of the stack in the barn.
Is that the father?
I believe so. He was dressed as though he was in bed because he only had underwear and a shirt on. Old Gazilia was in more clothing, but she had only one slipper on. Victoria, also fairly well clothed, had no slippers on. And the little girl was kind of in her PJs.
Yeah.
So pretty horrendous. Now do you get a sense of anything from this picture in the barn?
Yeah, just the impression that it was fast and furious.
Okay, so must be a tremendous amount of what? Hatred here? Anger,
Yeah.
what?
Feels like both the hatred, the anger.
Okay. And do you have a sense of who's doing this now?
It's still that man, the way I described him.
The one in the attic.
Yeah.
Okay, let's keep on going then. We'll have a look at photo number 8. In another graphic image, we have the body of Victoria. She's been moved, obviously. I don't know if you get anything from that. She's bloodied big time, and her head has been crushed. Do you have any sense from that?
It sort of feels like after this one seems more personal.
Okay.
Because it looks like it's not just her head, but it looks like he may have stabbed her in a few other places.
Yes, it's hard to tell, but I think it seems that the forensics and that kind of information is very poor and muddy in the detail. But it seems like some of the bodies were much worse off than others. Some more things have been done to some. And Victoria, I think, was one of the ones who had more done to her. Okay. And to make matters worse from a forensic perspective, by the time the police arrived hours later, the townsfolk had trampled over everything. They'd moved evidence. They'd actually been in the house cooking and eating while they waited. So there was no real forensic protection. Initially, that murder weapon was not found. So they did not know what caused the actual injuries. The way the dead were dressed, as I described, gave a sense that the murders happened on Friday evening. The autopsy eventually revealed that they were all murdered in situ. So the 4 people were murdered in the barn, Maria was murdered in the house in her bedroom, and the little boy was murdered in his bassinet. So let's just have a look at Maria's room, photo number 9. You can actually see where I've circled. That's actually Maria's body. So she's been dropped like a stone in her room.
Yeah.
Day 1 of her job. Poor thing. Has nothing to do with this family whatsoever.
But she just happens to be there.
Exactly. I mean, what a ridiculously bad coincidence to be there.
Here's the weird thing, because it's not a crime. We could call it a crime of opportunity, but it doesn't look like when I say that, I mean, it doesn't feel like anything was taken out of the house.
Again, you're ahead of the game, because in fact, after the police did some searching and talking to people what sorts of items the family had, they were sort of well off in the area. Nothing was taken. They found money, they found cash, they found valuables still in the house. So you're right. They originally thought it might have been a robbery, but then they came to the conclusion eventually that, in fact, most of their belongings, as far as they could tell, every belonging was still there.
Yeah, and the thing is, they would have had to been well off because they had a maid.
Exactly. Good for you to point that out. I was thinking it's not common that a farmhouse group people would have had a maid, but yes, indeed they did. Yeah. So let's look at photo number 10. This is a very spooky looking, but it's just a very poor photograph from ages ago. It's Victoria's bedroom, and this is the little bassinet that Joseph was found in, and I believe it's actually a crime scene photo. It's pretty hard to tell, but my presumption of looking at it, it looks like the top of the bassinet's been crushed in.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it?
Who in the world would want to kill a little baby? It really boggles the mind. What I want to ask you, Darcy, is why did they come to the barn?
I feel like, like if they had the cows in there, maybe they thought something was wrong with the cow, or they were expecting something, and then one person didn't come back in it in a timely fashion, so the next one went to look. It's sort of like that.
I think you're probably right, because of the idea that only one person could get through the door at a time, and I think you're also right about the vicious swiftness of the attack. When they came through the door, they were done for.
Yeah.
Instantly. Horrendous violence and, as you say, strength. Well, other peculiar things were discovered on the farm during that weekend. The same idea you also mentioned, that someone might be in the attic, because the cattle had been fed, they'd been milked, and in fact food had been prepared in the kitchen. So the police and others came to this really disturbing and shocking realization that it's a real possibility the killer could have remained in this locale for several days.
That makes sense with a sociopath, because they can make themselves at home even with dead around.
Yeah, remember we were talking just recently with the fellow Peter Manuel from Scotland who
Yep.
murdered people, and he stayed around in the places and fed the cat and ate dinner,
Yep.
and there were bodies about. I mean, it was just horrendous kind of dissociative behavior.
Yep.
So there's a similarity there. The police tested the sound for traveling from the barn stable area to the kitchen and beyond to Maria's room, and they found, the place was pretty thickly built, and they couldn't hear screams coming from the barn. So, as you say, perhaps somebody went to the barn for whatever reason, didn't come back. Somebody followed up, didn't come back. Next follow-up, didn't come back. I'm not quite sure why the little girl would have come. Maybe she would have been accompanied by her mother. Being so small, she might have been able to come through the door at the same time as her mother. Awfully, they discovered that she, the little Gazilia, had lived for some length of time before she died. So whether she witnessed anything more than her being struck, but they found that she was actually had survived a little bit, and she'd actually torn chunks of her hair out before she died. I mean, talk about a horrendous, terrible way to go.
Would be horrible.
Yeah. Now we're going to move to your possible perpetrator. This is going to be so interesting. We're really flying on, but look at photo 11, and this is where we'll use those numbers. So if you look at photo 11, you'll see number 1, as you said, was the master bedroom. Number 2 is where Victoria's bedroom, and that's where little Joseph was found. Number 3 is clearly the stable, and number 4 is the barn, that building that's jutting out. And if we look at image number 12, it's a plan, a layout of the locale of the farmhouse. And you can see on the far left, we have Maria's in her maid's room. There's the master bedroom, then the kitchen. Across is the Victoria's bedroom with the little body for Joseph. Then we have the stable, and then we have the 4 bodies, boom, 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 stacked up like cordwood, as you just perfectly described it, in the barn. And there's the little machine room where the guy came to do some work. So he actually did some work in that machine room, not realizing there were 4 bodies stacked up on the wall behind him, or in front of him. Can you imagine?
No.
Pretty horrendous. I can't get over it. Okay, we're going to have a quick look at number 13, because this is where you might see your guy again. This is a shot of the Gruber's attic. Do you see anything in there? Anybody in there?
1 sec.
Sure. Number 13. Lucky 13.
Oh yeah, you can tell someone's been living up there.
Well, I can't tell you what the time frame is of this photograph. So whether it's a crime scene as of the time frame photograph, or it's just a shot, my presumption is who else would have a photograph of the Gruber attic if it weren't for sort of like a police photograph. But there's no provenance for these kinds of photographs. I can't find any information.
Yeah, I realize that the energy from there could also be the police, but my guess is someone living up there.
Wow. Okay, well then let's see if this is a someone who is living up there. So police interviewed, as I said at the top, in the end, over 100 people. And they had a few serious suspects. And one, this may make you laugh, may not, believe it or not, is Victoria's dead husband, Carl Gabriel. He was the one who supposedly died in World War I. Now I say supposedly because his body was never found. However, his comrades in arms declared that he died and that they saw him die. So, I'm going to show you a picture of Carl, and you tell me if he's your guy scrambling around in the attic. Have a look at number 14 photo and tell me if that's the guy you've seen.
I'm going to say yes.
Really?
Yeah.
So, do you think it's possible Carl Gabriel didn't die in World War I and he came back?
Yeah.
Keep that in mind, because there's one other strong suspect we'll look at, and you can tell me. So,
If it's Renzo, the answer is no.
okay, well, it is Lorenza, I think. Let's have a look at him, and we'll compare. He's number 15. Have a look at 15. There's Lorenz Schlittenbauer. Great name.
Yeah. No, he's a little neurotic.
Yeah.
But I don't think he'd hurt his son, because I think he knew it was his.
Would he have hurt anybody else? He obviously just hated Andreas, the guy's raping his girlfriend, wife-to-be, whatever, mother of his child.
Yeah, he's a bit of a creep anyway, so I would say that, no, I don't think he's the kind of guy who would get his hands dirty.
Okay. So you go back to then 14. You think this guy, Carl Gabriel, came out of the war and what? Came back to the farm and did what?
And killed them.
But why?
Well, maybe he wanted a total disconnection. Maybe he was angry because, that son was born while he was in the war.
Right.
But when I turned to his picture, I was very nauseous. Very much normally the same kind of feeling I get when someone's done something wrong.
Wow. Well, that is considered to be, in some people's minds, a good idea. In most people's minds, completely outlandish, because the police interviewed his comrades in arms who said he was dead. Of course, but there's no body, and lots of people could have, and have, I guess, there's been incidents of people returning from wars years later, and maybe not recognizable. So, okay, I'll give you that as a real possibility. Now, you have to tell me you've got some kind of very long feather you're handling.
Oh, that was my cat's tail.
Oh. It looked like a feather. Wow. Okay, there's your cat going by. Good.
She came to have a look.
Okay.
Get her opinion on the subject.
Yes, well, I've always liked her opinion. Okay. Well, I'll tell you that no one was ever found guilty. No one was ever even put to trial, although Lorenz spent most of his life being a suspect. He did actually sue some people for slander, and he did actually win. But he had a pretty tough time living because people suspected him of being this mass murderer. The ownership of the farm was in real dispute following all these deaths. And funnily enough, it went to Carl Gabriel's father. So Victoria's father-in-law.
Okay.
Nobody, of course, wanted to live on the property, so it was destroyed. While they destroyed it, what did they find?
Well, I don't think well, they may have found something that belonged to the killer.
They found the murder weapon.
Oh, there you go.
There you go. Have a look at 16 and tell me, is that not the odd instrument that you were describing? It's called a mattock. It's like a pickaxe, but it's got a blunt, longer, a broader, sort of a sharp end, I guess. What do you think in number 16?
Yeah.
Very unusual weapon or implement. It doesn't really have the typical mattock would have one side that's kind of a pick and the other side might be a blunter, shorter kind of weapon, or something to use, but that would be perfect, as you described, to dig in the road. So astounding that you knew that. Why it was not discovered during the initial investigation and all the searching, no one can explain, but it was covered in hair, blood, and body tissue. No fingerprints, and that was about the rudimentary level of forensics in those days, so they could really gain nothing from seeing it other than they found a murder weapon.
Yeah.
Okay, so can you imagine wielding that onto a child's head?
No, I couldn't.
Yeah, I mean, it really does take you beyond reason, there's no doubt, beyond anything.
Yeah.
Okay, have a look at 17. It's a very poignant black and white image. Can you tell us what we are seeing there?
Well, we have the coffins, 2, 4, 6 of them. So the baby, the child, the 2 parents, the girl, and the maid.
Yeah, isn't that sad? And I think it might even be a bassinet to the left-hand side.
Yeah, those are awful small coffins.
Aren't they? Maybe it's a funny angle, and they're certainly, they're like, not quite octagonal, but they're certainly an unusual shape.
Yeah.
They're not the square box that we're used to.
No, not at all.
When you look at coffins, do you get any sense of anybody in them?
Yeah, but I hope they stay in them.
Well, I want to ask you about the bodies that are inside these coffins. Do you get a sense of something missing there?
When you say that, do you mean like a piece of them missing?
Exactly.
Yeah, I do. But I'm not sure what's missing on them.
Okay. Take a moment just to see, because this is kind of fun. I mean, it's horrendous, but it's kind of fun.
I don't suppose like they're missing their hearts or something, are they?
No, even worse, they're missing their heads.
That's what I thought it was. Why?
Well, this is the theory. The pathologists cut their heads off and sent them, believe it or not, to a psychic for their intuition to get a sense of what might have happened to these people. The psychic had no insights whatsoever, I think, that were worthwhile, and very sadly, the heads were lost, so the bodies were buried headless in these coffins, which is really tragic, I think.
Oh my God, can you imagine the unrest?
You're leading up to our listener's question. Keep that in your head. So just before we'll get to our last photo here, which is number 18. The case was officially closed in 1955, so this is from 1922, although of course it's remained open and everyone who's interested in true crime in the area forever. There's been lots of buffs looking into it, trying to get some ideas. And funnily enough, in 2017, an American author and his daughter put forward a theory. And I'll just say this is the nice little monument that they have to the family. It's just a little tiny white, looks like almost those little bookshelves that now people have in front of their lawns to have books away.
Yeah.
Cute little thing with their names on it. So I think that's pretty sad. That is the Hinterkaifeck farm now. Photo number 18, no buildings whatsoever. But as I was saying, there's an American author who's come up with this idea that the person who killed the Gruber family and Maria also committed, believe it or not, the axe murders in 1912 in Villisca, Iowa, which we looked into.
Oh.
So I don't know if you recall them. There was a number of people were murdered in the house. They were all axed, and you figured out that the murderer had actually climbed the stairs, gone past the two sleeping friends, past the children upstairs into the master bedroom, killed the parents, then the other children, and came back downstairs and killed the visiting friends. You were amazing then. So these people think that same person is the killer of the Gruber family. What do you think of that?
No, but I think they use the same method.
Yes.
I can't get that connection. I can't see that person crossing the ocean to do this. This one feels more like there is a connection and a little bit like revenge.
So your idea of revenge is pretty cool, because if you go with your theory of Carl Gabriel, husband to Victoria, presumed dead, comes back from the war hoping to be, I guess, probably honored as a hero, comes to the farm maybe quietly because he's not known to be alive and he wants to check out the situation first. Who knows? He might have some mental issues anyway. Finds that, in fact, he has a 2-year-old son and he's been dead for 5 years. He'd be pretty ticked off, I guess. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And so you think Carl Gabriel actually was not killed, and he actually was the murderer of his wife and her family and new maid.
I do believe so.
Wow. So it's a family annihilation in the end.
Yeah.
Just like they do nowadays. They take them down thinking they don't have a right to live.
Yeah. Which is a shame.
Wow. Well, Darcy, you were amazing tonight. That is our story about the horror at Witch's Wood. I can't believe you were so quickly be able to tell us the number of people were killed. All of them were killed. They were killed with an axe or a very unusual mattock kind of thing. Then you think it's Carl Gabriel. You picked him out. You talked about him being in the attic before you heard the paranormal thoughts that someone had been spookily running around the attic and keeping quiet. So you mentioned Carl would have a familiarity with the area and the house, and you were dead right. And therefore, he might have been able to evade Andreas.
Yeah.
And keep watch until he decided to make his move.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Any sense of what triggered the actual event? You know, if he hung around for a while?
I think that he probably had, as you put it, some mental issues going on. And he may have planned it with the idea of escape. At the end of the day, I think it was just opportunity.
Wow. And so he must have escaped.
Yeah.
We don't know when. Between Saturday and Sunday and Monday afternoon, somehow he escaped and was never seen again.
I would say as soon as the dog was put out, he was gone.
You think?
Yeah.
Okay, well that's amazing, and you really nailed so much. Well, thanks again. An excellent show. Very interesting, very sad. I mean, these ideas that people feel, I guess obviously they're mentally deranged. There's just no two ways about it. But I can see revenge to some extent. I can see it against Andreas. He's the perpetrator of all the horrific activities in the house. I can see killing him. But to blame the daughter or your wife because her father raped her is horrendously wrong. To kill your own daughter, whom you know is your own daughter, at age 7 is horrendously wrong. And then to kill an innocent little boy just because he's not yours. But not to mention the maid who just showed up, 2 hours earlier, and the wife of Andreas who had nothing to do with anything. Yeah, the hubris of these people is beyond measure.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks. I will let you go this evening. I appreciate your time and your knitting.
Okay.
Okay, talk to you again soon.
All right.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed listening to Seeing Dead People. Whatever's going on in Darcy's head, I think is so cool and astonishing. We'd love to hear from you with questions for Darcy about her psychic process or suggestions for other mystifying situations you would like us to investigate. So please, shoot us an email to info@radiosidney.ca with Seeing Dead People in the subject line. New episodes of Seeing Dead People will emerge on the first Saturday of every month and will also be available every Saturday night at 8 p.m. and Sunday morning at 10 a.m., both Pacific Standard Time. Seeing Dead People will also be available as a downloadable podcast online at radiosidney.ca for your convenience. Cool news! Seeing Dead People is now a podcast on YouTube. Just search for Nicola Furlong Mysteries, and you will find 3 podcasts of videos dedicated to Seeing Dead People. One for our actual complete episodes, another for Darcy's fascinating answers to our listeners' questions about her psychic process, and a third with teasers highlighting each episode. Thanks so much for listening to Seeing Dead People. I really dig researching, writing, and communicating with Darcy and her otherworldly contacts. So until the next time, remember, Seeing Dead People is a blast, with goosebumps guaranteed.
This has been a program of Radio Sydney.